Welcome back to the Moving Grief Podcast. I'm Jason Wendroff-Rawnicki, somatic grief therapist.
And I am Heather Stang, thanatologist and yoga therapist.
So, we have a very interesting topic for today. I know this winter, especially here in New Jersey, it's been so cold and so gray all the time. And I thought we would talk about the winter blues because I've really felt it a lot this last winter where I got very isolated and very hibernated, which is actually good for the season, but not always great when it comes to grief because we're already in that space of being vulnerable and being a little bit more isolated. And so sometimes it doesn't always work out so great.
And that word isolated comes up year round in grief.
No, for
And
sure.
this season just compounds it. I think you and I are kind of in two opposite worlds, even though I'm in West Virginia, which is gray and sad sometimes this time of year. But I have so many ways, and I have one special trick I'm going to share somewhere along the way to help me beat the winter blues. So
Hmm.
I'm really glad you brought this up. Now, that being said, do I wish I were in the Caribbean right now? Yes.
Well, and I have to say, last week I was in the Caribbean, and it made it very obvious. Like it made it very obvious being in that warm, sunny weather and then coming back to cold and snow. It became very obvious how the weather can really affect your overall emotional and mental health. Because even though I have a lot of rituals that I put into place, it really took me off guard being in that cold and gray.
It helps that I'm a snowboarder too. So that might be cheating.
Well, no, but I think that's a great like perspective. And I was going to mention something like that, right? Like, so when it comes to the winter month, perspective is everything. You can like sink into that isolation and you could sink into that hibernation, or you could go have fun in the snow, like skiing or snowboarding or snowshoeing. For me, it's running. One of the reasons why I am an avid runner and I actually like running in the winter is because it gives me that ability to go outside in the cold weather. There's an expression, there's no wrong weather, only wrong clothing. And and to me that's so true because everyone says, "Oh, I can't go out because it's so cold." Well, no, you can go outside if you have the right clothing to put on that keeps you warm.
Absolutely. Layers are key.
Yeah.
But there also are some places you can visit. And one of my favorites is to go to a botanical garden.
Mm.
Washington, D.C. has an amazing national botanical garden. And when I lived closer to there in the winter months, I would go in and they have separate sections. And so there's, this orchid room and then there's the tropical room. And it could be so gray and dull and sad outside. And you could be really depressed. And indeed, this was something I did during a period of depression. Just going into that space and being around natural
Mm.
flourishing plants in
Yeah.
an environment that is the temperature is turned up to take care of these plants, and a lot of cities and towns have these spaces.
Mm.
Not everyone, of course, but I found that to be just really helpful during that particularly difficult time.
Yeah, something, and you can get daylight balanced light bulbs for even at home, even if it's one light fixture, because I don't think people realize that even if you can't get outside, we still need that full spectrum light just to acknowledge that it's daytime. And it's really important to make sure that we're getting that like daily sunlight exposure. And if we can't do it outside with the real sun, we could at least bring the sun inside and use those daylight balanced bulbs. And you can replace one or two. Like we have a couple of fixtures in my own home that have them just so that it's not like gray or green. Like the fluorescent lights give a green light, and that's kind of a little on the more depressing side. And they show that the more your lights are reflective of what daylight balanced, speaking about like lights going on and off, right? Changing the color
Well,
temperatures.
so you're talking about one of my favorite things, and I just did that on purpose. My entire house, and this took me years to collect, okay, I would ask for these color changing light bulbs as gifts because they used to be really expensive. They're not that expensive now. And so even though I'm not going like full spectrum is definitely important and a thing, but I have color changing bulbs throughout my entire house. And this is my number one personal hack for getting through winter. So I
Yeah.
have in my living room, I have like an overhead light, and I might make that blue, and then surrounding lights that I might make purple. And it just changes my mood.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to show you that since we're
Well,
sitting
and
right
I
here.
yeah, and I was shocked to see all the color. It looked like
Well, even look
a
at this.
little disco.
Look at this.
Yeah.
This this right here. This right here.
Yeah.
You can It looks white on the screen, but it's actually purple. This
Right.
is right in front of my monitor, and I'll adjust it. I might still have white up here, but I'll still kind of adjust it to give that pop of color. And it might
Yeah.
sound like so simple, but I think this goes to that intention of taking care of yourself, giving yourself what you need, whether it's cozy blankets, fuzzy
Yeah.
slippers, that special mug. And I know when you're grieving, you can think these little tchotchkes don't matter, right? It's not
Yeah.
going to bring back my son, my mother, my brother. We totally get that. We
Yeah.
completely feel that. We've been there, right?
Yeah.
But that act of intentionally creating a space for yourself that feels comfortable is a
Yeah.
better alternative than being in a really sterile, cold, unfriendly environment.
Yeah. And something that we don't always think about when we're creating our environments, especially during the winter months, is the aromas in our environment. So, like, I'm a big fan of diffusing essential oils, like pure therapeutic grade oils, because they can also have a huge impact on your emotional state. Because our olfactory system is so closely connected with our limbic brain that when we breathe in uplifting aromas, they can activate that part of our brain that controls our emotions. And so you can actually use citrus oils like wild orange or lemon or tangerine or clementine, those types of oils to help to really stimulate your emotional wellness as well. And then at night, the relaxing oils like lavender or cedarwood or vetiver to help prepare you for sleep. So you can use those, they have a huge impact on our brains. And so if you can create that environment for yourself, not just with your lights, but with the aromas in there and and the lighting and everything like that, you can create a space that kind of counteracts a lot of the stuff that goes on during the winter.
And I have that throughout the house as well. I'm a very sense oriented human.
Yeah.
Not everybody is. You are as well, right?
Yeah.
So, sight,
Well,
sound, smell, taste, touch. So, I've got my light bulbs, I've got my diffuser, I've got soundscape going. It depends on what mood I'm in. Am I
mm,
listening to my indie rock? Am I listening to my spa channel? But to get back to the oils, you said that keyword good quality because I know there's research
uh,
out there that talks about natural, real essential oils versus synthetics. And it is such a difference. One impacts the brain, one doesn't.
well, they both impact the
Oh,
brain.
okay.
One does it positive, like
Oh,
right. What the good quality essential oils affects the brain towards health and wellness, right? The other one, the poor synthetic grade oils affect the brain in the opposite way. They can actually cause like headaches and different things like that. I actually know a veterinarian where she was working with a dog that used to have seizures, and it came from things like Febreze and all of those artificial air fresheners that people put in the air. And so we think that it may smell good, but are you putting chemicals in your environment, or are you keeping it as clean as you possibly can? And so that's the benefit. And I actually had my own averse reaction to synthetic oils, especially with cheap carrier oils in them. And so I think you and I are both doTERRA people.
mhm.
The quality of their oils, they do all kinds of third-party testing, and I highly recommend doTERRA as a company. I am a huge advocate for them. So
You brought up vetiver and doTERRA. when my
Mm.
dog Monster was at the end of his life, and I'd take him to this animal rehab center and they'd do acupuncture. Yes, I know, very privileged dog, but just such a sweet, sweet soul, that one. And they would have vetiver, doTERRA vetiver diffused throughout the space,
Yeah.
which number one just made me love them because they really cared about, and it was for the animal, but it was also for the humans too, because they're working with, animals at end of life. And so that's a special scent to me.
Yeah.
And I
Oh,
think too about my dog now, and I know dogs and cats have different allergies even to the good essential oils, so you want to be mindful of that. But like when I'm picking my oils, I think about what's going to impact, what's going to not impact my dog in a negative way, and what's going to impact in a positive way.
yeah. And when it comes around, like, so I actually used frankincense when my cats were at end of life, and it helped. Like, I literally watched their anxiety just sort of drift away once we started rubbing it on, and they just passed peacefully. But when it comes to pets and essential oils, you do have to be careful at the quality, but I have a colleague who's a veterinarian who uses doTERRA essential oils in her practice because of their quality and their effects on the animals themselves. And so they're not all, there's a lot of bad press for oils and essential oils and pets, but if you're using good quality oils, you're usually pretty safe.
And if they're not licking it directly, and it's
Or
right. Don't you
Or
don't want to
even there are some that are
that they
totally
can,
safe.
right?
Yeah, that they can. So just get more educated. If you need more information, just reach out to one of us so that this way we can get you the right resources. So I wouldn't just start, opening up your dog's mouth and pouring essential oils down there, but you
Just
have to
don't
do
think
it
that would go well
responsibly.
but that takes us to animals and the winter blues.
Yes, for sure.
One thing that really gets me outside, whether I want to go or not, is having an animal. And
Mm,
last night I went to at the book launch for Mary Frances O'Connor's new book called The Grieving Body. And she wrote The Grieving Brain. And she reminded us of how important it is when you're grieving to have reasons to get outside and to
mhm.
have reasons to get together with other humans. And I think this ties to winter blues too, right?
Oh,
Because there's this tendency to feel like, oh, I don't want to go outside. It's too cold, or which fair, I get that again. But to actually plan ahead, to have reasons to not be isolated
yeah.
is important. And whether that's getting outside into the natural sunlight or into the cold, I actually find personally, if I'm going through a period of depression or a period of grief, even when it's really cold and bitter outside, there's an awakeness to it
Mm,
that kind of brings me back to my own body and to my own life force, because you really feel that air coming into your nose, and you feel, the cold on your skin. And even if you don't necessarily call it pleasurable, it can shift your perspective. Or at least then when you go back inside and you feel the warmth and you feel that melting, there's that sensation. And I guess that leads us to mindfulness, because sensation brings you into presence.
yeah. Well, and when you were saying that, I think of my cold dip in the morning, right? Like, so, cold dipping is, I know it's like this craze that people are doing. It's actually really good for the cells of your body because what happens is that it moves the lymph because when you get into like a 40 or a 50-degree tub of ice cold water, it causes everything to contract. But if you want to forget about grief for 6 minutes, jump into a 40-degree tub and submerge yourself because you're not thinking of your grief at all. The only thing you're thinking of is your body. And it's quite a remarkable thing because it's a reminder for me, even on a psychological level, is that if I can do that, I can do hard things. And so, like the little things, like, oh, I don't want to go out in the cold. I call BS on myself. I'm like, if you could sit in a 40-degree tub for 6 minutes, you can put on a nice warm jacket and a nice set of boots and get yourself outside. So for me, it's not just the physical, which it is, but it's also the psychological of doing hard things. And it doesn't have to be sitting in a cold tub. Do something that's challenging for yourself, something that pushes you out of your comfort zone, just as a reminder that we can all do hard things.
And if you don't have a cold tub to plunge into, one of the things I do is just a quick cold shot in my shower. Like at the end of
Yes.
the shower, just turn that dial, grip my teeth,
Yep.
and eventually stop that. But
Yeah.
it does wake up, again, wakes up the body. And
Well, and it also like it trains your body to necessarily not listen to your mind, right? So your mind is like, no, 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 don't do this thing, and then you do it anyway, right? Like it says, when I say go, you go. And it's really a great way of training your body to take action even when the mind doesn't want you to.
grief is something that's really hard that we don't get a choice to go through.
Yeah.
And I think just the process of grieving itself forces you to do the things you don't want to. When you can set up an experiment in your life where you're choosing to do the hard thing,
Oh, yeah.
right? And then you actually accomplish it. It's a different experience. Both are
Mm,
very valid and both are very important. And the hard thing for some days is getting out of bed, getting through the day.
yeah.
And some days it's doing a cold plunge, and some days it's deciding you're going to go learn to ice skate, which was a hard thing I decided to do a couple years ago when I realized climate change is making snowboarding a little more challenging.
Mm,
And actually, it was extra hard because it wasn't just me going and learning with other adults. I went and learned with 6 to 8 year olds. Nothing is more humbling than being in your 50s and learning to ice skate with 6 to 8 year olds.
yeah. Yeah, but but that takes you out of your comfort zone, right? Like and that's where all of our growth happens is outside of the comfort zone, right?
Absolutely. Yes. It was, number one, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get on these blades on ice, which, wasn't something I'd done much before. And with these little beings who are lower to the ground, are far more fearless. And again, even though it seems like, oh, no big deal, there's so much internal chatter inside your head when you try something new.
Yeah.
One of the exercises that I have it's in the original mindfulness and grief book, and I still use it with my clients today when we get through the process and kind of are starting to move into post traumatic growth and who am I now, is to pick something they've never done before, whether it's going and eating in a restaurant alone, whether it's signing up for a class, learning a language, it doesn't matter. But to give us back that sense of self-efficacy
Hmm.
and to bring it back to winter blues, since that's the topic. I think the winter gives us many opportunities when we can try new things during a period of time where our tendency might be to isolate and hunker down.
Yeah. And it just got like when you were just talking, it got me to think of the tool I want to offer for today, right? Because what happens is that when we have the idea to do something like, oh, I'm going to go ice skating or I'm going to learn a new skill, if you don't take action on it within 60 seconds, your mind comes up with all these excuses why you shouldn't do it. Because our mind is designed to protect us. It's a survival mind. It's not designed to make us happy. It left to our mind's own devices, it keeps us where we are because the unknown is unknown, and it would rather keep us safe and secure than have us go out on a limb for possible, injury or that kind of stuff. So our mind is designed to keep us where we are, and if we want to grow, we got to get over ourselves. And so the tool today is the 5 4 3 2 1 go. So whenever you have an idea to do something and you find yourself hesitating, just count down from 5, 5 4 3 2 1 and go and take any action. Doesn't matter what it is. It's amazing how quickly when you tell yourself to go and you go, it counteracts all of that hesitation. So as quickly as you can, you get the idea, oh, I'm going to go ice skating, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. You get your skates and you go out and go do it, right? And this way, even if it's like cleaning up your loved one's stuff, that is so emotionally taxing. But if you pick a small little area, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just go and clean up a small area, it will train you to kind of to not hesitate and to take action more quickly.
And I'm thinking if you don't already have the ice skates or know where the ice rink is, the step after the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 might be to Google ice rink near
Yeah.
me.
Right,
The
right. Doesn't
next
right.
best step to just get you in that frame of mind. And you're right, the subconscious mind is there to keep you safe. And what is safe is what it already knows because you're alive right now. So everything you've done up until this point has kept you here. So why change it?
Yeah. Yeah, right. And when you do those new things, it just adds a whole new layer to life. I've become comfortable being uncomfortable, right? So I'm training myself. I'm still always conditioning myself because when we stop that conditioning process, we revert. It's perfect. Like when I went away for 5 days. I was loving the winter. I was loving the cold. I went away for 5 days into the 80-degree weather. And then as soon as I came back, I reverted to, oh, the swinter, oh, the this, right? So our body does, if we have to keep working at it. It's always a constant, never ending learning. So
So, winter blues, try new things.
yeah.
Also, riding the horse in the direction it's going, as my
Yeah.
teacher, Jonathan Faust, used to say to us. That to me is it is winter. There are certain circumstances that I can embrace.
Mm-hmm.
So I can embrace, the desire for warm tea. I can embrace the fluffy blankets. I can
Yeah.
embrace putting on the layers and trying to enjoy that. Like trying to actually not resist reality right there is like grief work
Yeah.
because with grief we can't change the reality. We are learning to live with it. And this is making me think of William Warden's third task of mourning. The first is accepting the reality of the loss, the second is coping with the pain of loss. And the third is learning to live without the person who died. And that's taking on new roles, that's learning new tasks. And then the fourth is embarking on your new life while maintaining a connection and enduring connection to the person you've lost. And that's about learning new things that you
Yeah.
want to learn, the ice skating, the languages, the sourdough bread, whatever your jam is.
Yeah, and I always trying to find that balance between the willfulness of like, oh, I have to go out and take action, and then just surrendering into like that moment because the winter is a time for hibernation, right? That's the bears hibernate. They eat a lot they eat a lot right in the fall, and so that in the winter they can hibernate and have what they need. So there is that natural inclination to isolate and hibernate and to kind of rethink what's going to happen in the spring and then in the summer. So it's that time of rest, so it's honoring that. But obviously with grief sometimes that can get really really heavy, and finding that balance between taking action and just relaxing into what is.
Right. Because we don't want to pathologize the idea of wanting to turn inwards when you're
Right.
grieving.
Yeah, it's and knowing that it's part of the changing of the seasons. That's just the way Nate riding the waves of nature. There are certain times. If I was a farmer and I tried to, plant seeds in the winter, that's going to be a problem, right? Like the winter is not the time to plant seeds. It's the time just to let the soil rest so that the seeds should be planted before so that in the spring they start to sprout. So every season has its time, and so we have to kind of go with the flow but also recognize that the balance of it all.
And part of it's just coming back to what do you need?
Yeah. What do you and who you are too, because I feel each of us have our own patterns. So I know for me, if I'm left to my own devices, I will sit on the couch, I'll watch TV, I'll feed myself with popcorn and chips and all that kind of stuff, because that's just what my natural inclination is. But I know if I do that, the outcome won't be great. Like I won't be active and I'll be overweight for sure. And so I know now I need to make sure that I'm balancing out, knowing that that's how I go out of balance in my inertia. I need to balance that out with action. Some other people are very action driven and they never take a break for themselves. And so it's all really working with what you're given and finding and knowing yourself, right? Knowing yourself well enough to set yourself up for success.
Dual process model of coping with bereavement by Strube and Schutt is all about tending to your grief and tending to your life.
Yeah.
And tending to your grief is that going in and that being with, we can also think of it as like that hibernation period, and the tending to your life is the getting out.
Yeah.
And depending on where you are in your grief journey, you're going to oscillate more often than other people, right?
Well,
But it
and
goes back to
don't
balance.
yeah, and don't get down on yourself. Like if you have those moments, like I had a couple days last week where I was just like, I am gonna curl up on the couch and I'm just gonna kind of chill and not to beat yourself up over it because you may need to do that. You need to do that from time to time, and that's okay.
Oh, I just love curling up under, and I'm very into faux fur. Again, talking about sensory things and
Yeah,
winter, like my bedspread, my pillows, my couch. It's all these faux fur blankets and fluffy. I have pillows that I swear look like they're made from Oscar the Grouch's fur, just super cuddly, and I'll knit,
yeah,
and just have my tea. And I love that I can do that now because I definitely used to be somebody who was go, 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 and the idea of just sitting still wasn't me, and then my body got shingles and kind of forced me to take a look at that. Interesting how that works, but now I find such pleasure in the sitting still that I think that's maybe another reason why I don't mind winter so much. I mean, I do love
yeah.
my winter sports, but I also love my winter hunkering down as well.
Yeah. And first, I kind of want to go back to that, like making sure that you're connected with community, right? Like because we are even if it's in the winter, it doesn't even have to, I mean, an in-person community would be great, but even if it's not in person, and some sort of online community would also be great because we're designed for connection. You know, having a grief buddy or someone that you can call or text and you can keep each other accountable, and I think that is so important. One of the things that just brings me joy is when I hear even from my peer support group that I was having a rough day and I texted this person and we had a quick conversation and then all of a sudden it snapped me out. Just knowing that someone's got your back and someone's there to listen is so invaluable and can be so helpful, especially during these winter months, because we do feel like alone sometimes.
And having that planned out, again, this came up last night. This is why I want a grief group. This is why you do your sessions and your
Yeah.
peer support group. I have had many people say to me, yeah, I had a really hard, whatever day it was, but I knew Monday I could come here and talk about it. And that
Mhm.
made me feel less alone. feel the same thing about, the coach I go to.
Yep.
If I'm having a rough day, I know I'm not alone in this. Maybe it's not right this second. Maybe I reach out to my best friend, but I have a professional that I can go to. So whether it's professional support, like from you or I, or group support from you or I, or your friends or your grief buddies, I mean, why not have it all if you can?
Yeah. No,
It's
yeah, I think we need that whole
yeah,
multidisciplinary, like don't just rely on one, right? Like
right.
I have a couple of mastermind partners. Like when I start kicking myself and getting down on myself, I reach out to them and I'm like, I need a little energy boost, right? Like so, and it's not my grief people are different than my business people that are different than, so I have layers of support. And I think that's really important because not everyone, even not every one person is going to be able to do everything for you. You need to have those new, it's very nuanced. So make sure you have a bunch of support on all different levels.
And sometimes it's nice to even have that support person that you know isn't going to ask you questions. They're just going to, go to the movie with you and hang out with you. And then you have that other person that's going to ask you the really deep questions.
Yeah.
And you can pick and choose, like, who do I need to talk to right now? Is it the person who's going to distract me and give me a break from this, or is it the person who's going to go deep?
Yeah. I mean, I know even with my wife and I, when we kind of talk with each other, I try to ask her. Now, I'm not always perfect at it. Do you just need me to listen, or do you actually want me to respond? Because there are times where we just need to talk and we don't need that response. And to be able to communicate that clearly. Now, this has taken us a while to get to this point because I usually am really great at giving my own advice, and but she doesn't always need that. And it's the same with me. Sometimes I just need her to listen. And I think there have been a couple of times when we've been on a call together and I'm like, I just need to bitch for a little bit. I don't need like feedback. I don't need the solution. I just need to vent. And I think it's important to be able to communicate that with the people around you, especially during the winter, right? Or
Yeah.
anytime.
Anytime, but during the winter when we do tend to be more isolated, most of us.
Yeah.
So my tool, your tool is the 5 4 3 2 1.
I absolutely love that.
I
I
love
use
that.
that all the time. Yeah.
I'm glad you gave that to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I've never heard this and it's genius. So thank
Oh my
you for
God.
that.
It's so simple. It's stupid simple. Like
It's like
it's
counting
stupid
backwards
simple.
from 5.
Yeah, right. But the thing is, the two
Simple.
things is you have to say go and you have to take action. It doesn't matter if it's even the right action. Like even if you're like 5 4 3 2 1 and go and stand up and then run around the room for a second, like at least it doesn't even have to be in the direction of where you're going, but it has to be something.
Great movement.
Yep.
Well, this is going to be a pretty simple one, but it's a powerful one. And you know how much I love to give journaling practices on here.
Mm.
And so mine's going to be to switch from your dominant hand to your non dominant hand when you write. And that
Ooh.
shifts how your brain reacts to what is going on. It also slows you down, just the
Mm.
mechanics of it. Like I'm actually thinking I haven't done that in a while. It's something that I have to admit I have my clients do, but I haven't been doing
Yeah.
lately. So I need to bring it back because I'm typing a lot. And I was even thinking, what would it even feel like to hold a pen in my
Yeah.
non-dominant hand? And it feels so strange. But this can get your analytical mind out of the way
Oh.
and can create space for more solutions. So, the journaling prompt, since we're talking about winter blues, would be to brainstorm ways that you could beat the winter blues using your non dominant hand. Based on what we've said, what's come up in your own mind, things that you've done before that worked? When were some periods of relaxation, rest, bliss, dare we say joy, maybe
Yeah.
that you've experienced in the past as well, and just make a list using that hand and see what comes up.
Yeah, that's a great way of kind of also rewiring the brain a
Mhm.
little bit because we get so used to those habits, it actually acts like a pattern interrupt when you have to switch those hands.
And especially since so many of us are typing our journals these days, to actually pull out a pen. Like, I'm glad I brought this up for me. Again, it's something I give to clients all the time and just realize I haven't been doing myself because typing. It's doing things in a different direction.
Yeah. And writing, they show with research, it actually helps your memory too. It helps you to remember things. And not in the same way that typing does. Typing, it definitely doesn't activate that the motion part of yourself because you're just like, but writing actually creates grooves in your brain. Whenever I teach a class, I say bring a pen and bring a paper and take handwritten notes because even if you don't look at the notes again, I think it's something like if you just listen to information, I think you remember about, now my percentages may be off, like 30 or 40%. If you handwrite it, you remember like 60 to 70%. That's even if you never look at the notes again. So it actually improves memory retention. So if you're forgetful, start writing things down with pen and paper.
Which we know when we are grieving, we are extra forgetful because our brain is trying to figure out what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
So
And going back to, and I was going to mention this earlier, but now I guess is the point, is like you were talking about like things that bring you joy, like those little things. And one of the things for me personally is I decided many years ago that rather than having these cheap pens that like work 3 times and then you throw them out, I got a like a decent quality pen, and I just replaced the ink. And I really enjoy writing with it. And to be honest, my latest pen, I wish I had it here with me, has all bumblebees on it. And for those of you that know my brand, right, my brand of somatic grief therapy, my sister is represented by the bumblebee because that was her Hebrew name translated into bee. So I have a pen with bees all over it, and I that's my like my go-to pen, and I absolutely love writing with it. And so I write down even ideas that come up that I want to implement. I handwrite everything down so that this way, at least if I don't look at it again, then I it's more likely to stay in my memory and more likely for me to take action on.
well, so my pens aren't fancy in terms of that level, but I do have a ton of colored erasable pens that make me
Cool.
so happy in,
Yeah.
all sorts of colors. And each color kind of means something different for me. So even when I'm
Yeah.
scheduling things out, I have different colors, but it does make a difference. It goes back to what we were talking about, finding the things that bring you comfort and joy. They're going to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah. Well, and from a motivational perspective too, we move towards pleasure and we move away from pain. So like those are two huge forces of motivation. And so when you enjoy writing with a colored pen that you can erase, or with me, it's my B pen, right? Or whatever moves you towards that pleasure, you're going to be more likely to repeat it rather than, push away from it.
My fuzzy blankets move me towards pleasure.
Right.
Like
But
they just actually, I love summer, I love spring, all that, but I do get a little sad when, it's time to put away the winter things.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something I've also been thinking a lot about this winter is that, you know, we sometimes think during the winter we like kind of backslide in our grief, but I don't think that's in fact true. I think that, we learn like the progress in grief is about all the little things that we do. It's not about the big, it's not like one day I'm going to be grieving and the next day everything is going to be hunky dory. The progress is so incremental, and just we don't notice it, and it's not till afterwards, like, so you and I can look back 20 years and realize where we've come, but people that are seeing us now, it's like it's all of those little incremental steps that we've taken that have gotten us here, rather than something like magic that it's going to all be better, right? I think
Or
if
like a plant growing,
yeah, right, right,
than
right.
like, I don't know. I guess I'm on food right now. Not putting the piece of bread in the toaster and pressing the button.
Yeah,
It's a lot slower than that. And just think about if there's been someone in your life, or maybe you met them when they were a little kid, and then you see them like 2, 3 years later, and you're like, oh my gosh, you sprouted up. I mean, grief is kind of like that.
yeah,
You don't necessarily notice the changes until you have some space. That's why I do really encourage people to keep a journal of some sort, even if they're not someone who likes to write, for 15, 20 minutes a day, but just little notes like, this is how I felt today. And then
yeah,
going back 3, 6, 12 months and
yeah,
looking, at the beginning of the year, we always do a journal review in Awaken where people can flip through and see, what was my year like.
Yeah.
and notice what changed over this year.
Oh,
And they'll always be surprised.
yeah.
Always like, wow, I forgot that really hard day. And then wow, I thought things were really tough, but I'm actually seeing, yeah, it's been hard, but I'm seeing the ability to withstand this, the ability to take care of myself, the resilience that's starting to grow.
Yeah, because you can't manage what you don't measure. And journaling is a way of like in a kind of way of measuring your grief of how it's going. I
The
mean,
intensity.
the intensity and what you're doing and those little actions that you're taking and how you're feeling and how you, right? So you can't manage what you're not measuring. So find some way of navigating that, even if it's a self-measuring tool, on a scale of 1 to 10. I feel one being I feel like crap, 10 I'm feel amazing. Even like I have a tool called the mood meter, where every day, you just kind of get a self-judging thing of where you are so that you can measure it. And what do I need to do if I'm not liking the number score that I'm at? What can I do to change that, right? And what do I need to activate to change how I'm feeling?
And maybe during the winter blues season is a good time to start that if you're not doing it already.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And changing sleep patterns is a good, like if you want to alter your sleep patterns and get on a more consistent sleep schedule, winter is a great time to do that. Go to bed a little bit earlier if you're a late nighter, get up a little bit earlier. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank
sweet.
you for sharing your tip.
Yeah, this is awesome. So where can we get hold of you, Heather?
I am at heatherstang.com, and you can join me over there for Awaken, my grief support group, and the new Mindfulness and Grief Mastery, which is designed for professionals. And my list of books are also on the website. So come on
That's
over and say hi.
That's awesome. And for me, you can connect with me on somaticgrief.therapy.com. I'm actually working on Revive. It's going to be a monthly program where we'll be doing group classes every week, and then there'll be a monthly Q&A. And I'm still in the process of working on it, but hopefully by the time this podcast is aired, I will have some more information on that, because I am excited about it. I can't wait to do groups.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
Two,
go.
one, go. I did that today, and that's it. I have a graphic. I have some of this. And actually, you know what the thing is talking about like journaling and keeping written records. I had written an outline of Revive. I guess it was probably about 3 or 4 months ago. And so I had to go back to one of those old journals and find it. And so I was able to do that. And that's one of the benefits of writing things down, is that you can then go back and check it out. And so I now have a graphic, and now I just have to get some of the landing page stuff up and that going. But hopefully by the time this is out, that will be up and running.
That's exciting. I know people are going to really benefit from that.
Yeah.
Well,
Cool.
thank you all. We'll see you next time.
Yes. See you next time.